Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Kamish Orr, and welcome back to something I like to call Stories from the Maelstrom, a recap of the day's games for this past week of real time. All right, we had some more excitement this week in the league. After today's games, we will only have two 4-game series left to finish the season. So we start in Boston as the Detroit Rockets face off against the Boston Splinters, the top two teams in the American League. Detroit with the lead over Boston currently. And the final game of their series goes to Detroit. This was a pitcher's duel. Jim Palmer facing off against Roger Clemens. Both pitchers with shutouts through 9 innings as they shut down the opposing team offense. Palmer actually had only allowed 5 hits in those 9 innings, struck out 5, walked 4 though. Meanwhile, though, Roger Clemens, he had allowed only 3 hits in his 9 innings, 6 strikeouts for him. Those 3 hits, a double in the first and a couple of singles. So we headed to the 10th inning, and Ichiro Suzuki with 2 outs hits a solo shot against Palmer, who was still in the game at that point, and gave Detroit their only run of the game. Tom Henke comes into the bottom of the 10th, and things got a little interesting when, with 2 outs, Biz Mackey singled, and Henke walked Ricky Henderson to put the tying run on second. But Tony Oliva flew out to end the game, as Detroit takes this one 1-0. The teams combined for just 10 hits in this one. Ichiro was only his second home run of the season. He was 1 for 5 in this one. Interesting thing to note about these two teams is that we have the top 3 batting averages in the American League in this game. Ichiro was 1 for 5, dropping his average to .355. Adrian Beltre, 0 for 4, dropping his average to .354. And leading the American League in batting average, Ted Williams went 1 for 4. His average now .368. This was the final game of a 4-game series between these two teams. The last time they will face off against each other this season. And Boston still within striking distance of first place. Detroit is 27-19. Boston's 24-21. So just 2.5 games separates these two teams with 8 games left to play. Heading over to Los Angeles as the Dynamos having a rough time of it, facing off against the Chicago Docks in the last game of a 4-game series between these two teams. Chicago in last place in the National League, but they've been playing spoiler. LA desperately needed a win here to stop their slide and to give them a shot against the St. Louis Wizards for first place in the National League. But that was not going to happen in this one. Doc Gooden pitches a complete game, takes a shutout into the 9th against LA, striking out 11. The sole earned run on a sac fly from Chuck Klein with the bases loaded and 1 out. But that's the only run LA could muster. Chicago scored quickly against Sandy Koufax. LA was hoping Koufax would be the answer to them stopping this losing streak they're in. But Koufax couldn't do it. He allows a couple runs early in the first. Jimmy Rollins and Albert Pujols hit back-to-back doubles to score the first run of the game. Buster Posey hits an RBI single later in the inning to give them 2 runs in the first. They did score another run in the 4th. Koufax did limit them to 5 hits. He only went 7 innings, struck out 10 though. But again, just not able to, the LA offense just not able to do anything in this one. And so LA falls to 24-22. A couple of items to note here. The Dynamos have lost 8 of their last 9 games. They just got swept by the last place Chicago Docks in this 4-game series. They've lost 5 in a row, actually. And their playoff hopes look like they have evaporated. They do face off against the St. Louis Wizards in a 4-game series next. But barring a miracle, it looks like LA has seen their playoff hopes and World Series hopes disappear. Heading over to Oakland as the New York Swats take on the Oakland Jacks. And once again, we went deep into extra innings in this one. These two teams went 14 innings in yesterday's game. Satchel Paige blew a save in that one. And in today's game, it was tied 2-2, sending it to extra innings again. In the top of the 11th, Jimmy Fox actually hit a solo shot off Whitey Ford to give the Swats the lead. Satchel Paige came in to try to close things out, but Hank Greenberg responded with a solo shot of his own to tie things back up. That was Satchel Paige's 4th blown save of the season. So this game went into the 13th when Red Faber came in, and the very first batter he faced was Robin Yount in the bottom of the 13th, who hit a walk-off solo home run. So Oakland with back-to-back extra inning wins, extra inning walk-off wins, no less. Satchel Paige will try to figure out what he's been doing wrong here, but Oakland takes this one 4-3. They improved to 21-24. New York falls to 19-27. And next up, we head to Houston, the Astrodome, where the St. Louis Wizards face off against the Houston Hoots. LA lost earlier in the day. If St. Louis could win this one, give them even more insurance there in the National League. And that's exactly what happens in this one. Juan Marichal goes 8 innings, allowing just 4 hits and 1 earned run. That earned run coming in the 6th inning, thanks to a couple of doubles, one by Willie Stargell and another by Jeff Bagwell. But that was the only run Houston could muster. Burley Grimes, actually, he didn't pitch too bad, actually, in his 8 innings. He allowed a couple of runs there in the 2nd, thanks to Stan Musial's leadoff triple. So a couple runs there in the 2nd. A solo shot to Musial in the 4th. That's his league-leading 16th home run. And there in the 5th is when things really fell apart. After Grimes struck out Oscar Charleston, got Tony Gwynn to line out, but then allowed back-to-back singles to Larry Walker and Stan Musial and walked Willie McCovey to load the bases before Ted Simmons cleared the bases with a double. St. Louis took a 6-1 lead into the 9th, and Fergie Jenkins almost blew it. He allowed the first 3 batters he faced to reach base, including an RBI single there from Gary Carter, before he got Ryan Sandberg to ground out and Hank Aaron to ground out, scoring another run. Duke Snyder hit a 2-run shot to cut that lead to 6-5 before Mike Schmidt doubled to make things really interesting, but Bruce Sutter came in and struck out Willie Stargell to end the game for his 13th save. Marichal improves to 6-3, and St. Louis finally gets that 30th win. They are 30-16. So if we head over to the standings, we can see that Detroit has a 2.5 game lead on Boston in the American League. Oakland 5.5 games back. They have an outside shot, but pretty not a very good shot there. New York is out of it, almost statistically out of it. with just 8 games left to play. In the National League, St. Louis now has a 6-game lead on LA. Houston and Chicago are both out of it. Houston's 9 games back. Chicago 13 games back, though Chicago has won 4 straight against the Dynamos. The next 4-game series, we'll see LA at St. Louis. Again, barring anything miraculous from happening, St. Louis has this one wrapped up. LA would need to sweep that series, and then they'd still be 2 games back with 4 games left to play. So they would need something pretty miraculous to happen. They would have to basically win out and hope St. Louis loses their next 8 games, which isn't very likely. Meanwhile, in the American League, which is a much tighter race, Detroit is facing Oakland, and Boston and New York are facing off against each other here. So that'll be the race to watch, I believe. Now, as we head to the end of the season, there's 8 games left to play. As always, head over to baseballmaelstrom.com if you want to follow the action. But as we head to the end of the season, after the season wraps up, we will have the World Series between the top American and National League teams. And because we have not had any interleague play, this will be the first times those teams have been facing off against one another. We did have AL and NL players facing off in the All-Star game, of course, earlier this season. So go check that out if you want to see what happened there. But once this wraps up, I have some other ideas for some future projects. So stay tuned for that. I'll probably do a short video on the future projects. I plan to continue this league in some format with Payoff Pitch because I've really enjoyed it. I'll probably add another project to the mix with a game other than Payoff Pitch. But again, stay tuned for that. If you have any comments, questions, leave those down below. Be happy to answer those for you. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this kind of content, consider clicking the subscribe button so you don't miss anything in the future. And clicking the like button if you like this video. And then with all that said, until next time, have a great evening.